Right in this area, there are multiple instances of, if this was just video recording, there would be, complete nudity going on with Nat and Sarah in these situations. And so on the one hand, you're not directly confronted with that, but on the other hand, that means that the fact that you're kind of like being invasive in these private moments takes maybe a little bit longer to sink in.
Right. Once you figure that out, though, you're like, oh, what is this company doing?
Yeah.
And that is,
I find it interesting to give the player access to a lot of different elements of these characters' experience, including very private stuff that no one else is supposed to know, or that, only they think of themselves as having access to. And the AR figures give us the ability to put the player in the room in these situations in hopefully a way that kind of walks that line of being kind of uncomfortable when you think about it, but also not being so
prurient.
Yeah, exactly. As it would have been if you were just standing there at the time.
It's less working blue, but hopefully still emotionally resonant.
Oh, about as well as we expected. Yeah, we haven't heard who's staying on yet, and it can be a tense time, as you know. But how are things at Carnival? I trust you got back to terra firma.
Clive, may I come in?
8 months? Germ, I must leave now. Yeah, ring me again before the Resplendence leaves Earth space, won't you? Ta-ta. Sorry about that. An old friend from my Carnival days.
Consorting with the enemy?
Worry not, mon capitaine. I am nothing if not discreet.
Are you gonna miss me, Clive? If VT kicks one of us off of this pinwheel.
Miss you? How could I? The next thing VT would receive after ending your contract would be my letter of resignation.
Oh, so you think I'm the one who's getting shit canned?
I mean, considering how indispensable I am, naturally.
Evie, can you get back to cargo?
On my way.
May I?
Yeah, come on.
So do you suppose there's good news?
That'd be nice for a change. What is it?
Hey, remember when we talked about how I needed access to Odin's direct interface?
Uh-huh.
So how about this? Tell VT if they don't grant access to Odin, they're gonna have to find themselves a new network specialist.
Oh my god. Nat, you're not even renewed. Dude yet.
You don't have access to Odin?
No, there's a whole part of the networking module I can't even get into.
People, everything on this station is VT's property. We're subcontractors. They get to decide what exactly we do and don't have access to. It's in all our paperwork. So if you want to quit, then just quit, but don't make me your go-between.
I mean, it is fair. How is she meant to do her job?
Clive.
Then again, rules are rules.
Nat, I'll think about it. And for now, how about you just get the rest of this job done while you still have it?
Aye, aye, Captain.
Здорово, Томат. Как дела? Похоже, это реклама в таких летах. Я вот решил все-таки до конца надо пройти Такому. Хотел пройти до такого, не мог найти, решил сейчас все-таки надо пройти. Так, нет, тут в центре не надо, его цена. Прохождение. Убил Витя. Все такое вот. О, сюда. Нормально, как сам. Хорошо. Интересно, как в будущем будем решать то, что в невесомости. То, что в невесомости наше тело атрофируется, мышцы и все остальное. Нам нужно притяжение. Так, это вернуться туда. А мне нужно сюда. Что за игра? Tacoma. Я еще играю с комментариями разработчиков.
So, transfer shafts. These are the thing you either just went in or are about to, which takes you from the hub to a wing. And it's kind of internal studio speak for the process the player is going through. Player character where they grab onto a little sled inside of this long arm that goes from the hub all the way to the wing. And it takes them down there, drops them off, and it safely conveys them from 0G to gravity or the reverse.
And if you're going along the transfer shaft and thinking, "My, this is taking a long time," it's because we're loading stuff in the background.
Yes, and for that reason, it's actually the only part of the station. The 3 transfer shafts are actually the only parts of the station that are always loaded the whole time that you play. Another detail I really like is the way the boots light up whenever they magnetize, which you also see in the entryway. It was something that it took me a while to realize that was what was going on, but that's the kind of deep thinking about how things work that I really appreciate in this station.
Короче, что-то случилось на этой станции Tacoma. И вызвали нашего имитиоти Ферье субконтрактника. Вот ее визитка. Калифорния Республика. И вот ее типа задача. Заявка, вот то, что она пришла, описание задачи. Тут график работы экипажа можно почитать, все такое. Очень инфы хватает. Мы вот ходим и собираем данные ИИ, типа черный ящик и тому подобное. И пытаемся разобраться, что тут произошло. Типа нужно отправить на базу будет. А я параллельно в Раду играю, круто. Вот у меня один монитор. Я когда смотрю кого-то вот параллельно, ну еще читаю что-нибудь на сайтах. Играть возможности в основном нету. На одном мониторе это не очень удобно смотреть и играть. Так, выгружено на пустой корабль. Медицина. Так. Инженерия же питания, персонал завершено. Медицина. Кетчин пишет следующее сообщение. Надеюсь, ты это прочтешь. Твой начальничек уже идет назад из сортира. Счастливо. Факты какие-то. Сколько странных сообщений. Окей. Так, Канна собирает инфу.
I like his little coded communiques.
Yeah. People have tweeted like screenshots at us and called out these messages that kind of break into the player's AR interface sometimes. That are things like it should be saying AR crew member record recovered, but then it says something like death sentence suddenly,
Which
and
is a
then
surprise to some people.
Goes away again. Odin doesn't know what Amy's motives are. Like, as far as he knows, she's really there to take him back to Venturis and for him to be wiped. And so we wanted him to be trying to communicate with her and say, like, no, don't do this. And so for a while, I think we talked about, like, are we going to do this through, like, audio that cuts in or, like, some new interface thing that you see in different places? And then we had that realization that there are these kind of system messages, like when you're transferring into a wing or when you're recovering an AR scene, that he could subvert those via text that Amy's already seeing and just change what the meaning is, even if it's briefly. So yeah, I don't know how many people really are like conscious of these or how many make the connection, but I think hopefully by the end of the game you have that feeling, oh, that, you know, this was Odin all along.
Yeah, and there's a whole progression. You can see his feelings about Amy change as time goes on.
That's true. Yeah, it starts out him seeming kind of scared or panicking, and then I think by the end of the game he's starting to almost give her the benefit of the doubt or say, like, I don't have any choice but to trust you, basically.
It seems like he's starting to have a little bit of hope at the end, I think. But,
yeah.
Так, ладно, давай комментарии послушаю после того, как восстановлю запись.
Okay, Sarah. We'll see you over in Mac. Soon as everything's wrapped up here.
All right. Good speed.
Как игра? Мне нравится. Тут надо ходить, все читать. Я так мельком проглядываю. По-шустрому. Слушаю комментарии разработчиков. Некоторые слова понимаю, некоторые не очень. Так, этого я восстановил. Еще надо медика. Вот медик. Восстанавливаем. Тут у них какая-то авария случилась, или типа того. Вот у них осталось на 50 часов кислорода. Так, врача восстановили. Помойка.
Oh, Odin. Did I do the right thing?
In what regard?
Does Nat deserve to know what her odds are if she ends up going into cryo?
I believe that you have made a decision.
Один это корабль. Искусственный интеллект корабля.
With both Roberta and Natalie's best interests at heart.
Above all, do no harm. If we do make it out of this thing, Nat's going to have to find out I didn't tell her everything at some point.
I believe that is a bridge to be crossed at a later date. Andrew is here for his exam.
Oh. Send him in. So you showed up for your exam?
I did.
So does that mean you've decided to...
What's gonna happen to us, Sarah?
What? Well, Bert and Nat are going to fix up the drone with life support, and then we're...
No. I mean... What if things don't work out? And we're still stuck in cryo?
Oh. Well, when you go into stabilizing sleep, it feels just like any other sleep, really. The body effectively goes into a controlled hypothermic coma.
Do you dream?
Sometimes. Sometimes very intense dreams.
And then what?
After a certain amount of time, your body slows down too much, things start shutting down, don't wake back up.
It doesn't hurt.
No.
Oh.
Do you think Bert and Nat can get it done?
I do.
Потихоньку
Then
умирать.
I'll just have to trust your professional opinion and do my part. It's been good working with you, Doc. I'm ready for my exam.
Что это за звук? В той комнате? Что случилось? Давай, дождик. Выпустите зрители для меня. Ну, ты первый пока что. Разные информации с разных сторон. Добавить лояльность. Это неплохо. Заодно человека сделает лучше. Так, ладно, запуск.
Okay, Sarah.
Запускаем, и мне надо найти третьего
As soon as
чувака.
everything's wrapped up here.
Alright, good
Походу
speed.
отсюда придет.
Once more into the breach. What?
I don't know. I'm just thinking about how Evie and Clive are already in deep freeze. Did you read the message they sent?
Yeah. Why are we going into the supply closet?
I got to talk to them a little bit right before Sarah took them down to cryo, and Evie was being so encouraging. They're putting all their faith.
Погодите. Дай. Чувак вышел сам. Теперь его можно сканимать. Ботаник, Эндрю, Яп. Что, переписка? Вика, привет. Все, сканировал его. Сейчас послушаю, что эти говорят.
Evie was being so encouraging. They're putting all their faith in us, but...
But what?
Right before they turned to go, just for a second, they look so worried.
Oh, baby.
The clock is ticking, and I just keep thinking, what if the last time they saw each other is the last time they'll ever see each other?
Don't think about that.
How can I? How can you not think about it?
So, you know the concept of partitioning from early century computing?
Yeah, I think so.
So, you have a data drive. And maybe one partition was your operating system, and the other one was like general data storage. And maybe you'd partition part of the drive off to contain something that might be unstable or that you otherwise kind of, wanted not to interfere with anything else. There are certain things that are gonna help us get this done, but some things, they need to be partitioned off. Because thinking about them isn't gonna help us.
But you're thinking about us, at least, aren't you?
Yeah. And when I do let myself start thinking about how there's a possibility this is the last of our time together too, then I start thinking we should really make the most of it.
Вот откуда шум. Чудо. Никогда не знал такому, о чем игра вообще. Собрать данные. Вот как видишь, я уже запись установил, галочки стоят. Я могу не слушать это. Не читать тут все. Я могу тупо восстановить данные и слинять. Вот я хожу по отсекам. Вот я еще диалоги этих разработчиков включил. Вот, собираются данные. Видишь, они застряли, не идут. Они ждут, пока я восстановлю оставшиеся. Они доходят до 100%, я собираю, иду в следующий отсек. Игру можно пройти, заспидранить на изи. Тупо восстановив эти записи и все. Ничего не читая. Но мне интересно лазить, послушать разработчиков, но бывает это немного затяжно уже с разработчиками. Тоже интересно. Прикольно. Этих подписчиков. Окей. Просто лежит и слушает музыку. Что-то типа обсервер, но без кишек. Согласен. Или можно также сравнить сюда Play, но без шутерной механики. Там тоже можно ходить, читать компы и всякую остальную инфу. Изучать мир игровой. Ничего не произойдет. 3 месяца назад запись-то была. Я могу разбить стакан? Нет, не бьется. Хоть кто-то кроме меня появился. Ага. Окей, что разработчик скажет?
Sarah ends up being kind of the Ellen Ripley character of the game, but she didn't start as that character when we were writing the game. We really started from who the characters were and what their roles were, and then fit them into a plot. And I think that as we were going along, by getting to know Sarah, we realized that she made the most sense to be the person who would, in a way, kind of like team up with Odin to pull off this plan in the end.
Yeah, no one else's relationship with Odin is
со всеми
really as
дополнениями
personal at all.
валяется
Like
в
even
стиле.
Nat, whose
Вот
job
так
it
и
is
не
to work
прошел
with
еще.
him, you know, she treats him as a project a little bit, you know, and or a pet, and it's just not
Or a problem
quite
to
the
solve
same.
or a system. It was interesting for us to get a feel for Sarah and kind of realize she has a kind of like boldness to her and a determination to her, even if she also has these internal struggles with like anxiety and everything. And we discovered that she's the kind of person that if she was put into this kind of like high pressure do or die situation, she would just do her best to do it, you know. She would kind of rise to that occasion, and she ends up being the only person that can do that. And I think we get to see how she follows through.
So this is one question I have, because I don't remember how we got to it, but there was a lot of iteration on the design of the AR desktops, but what we settled on was kind of the horseshoe icons, which
You mean the horseshoe bat?
I think came from you. The horseshoe bat.
Yeah. Well, we started out with the earliest versions of it being a grid of screens almost that would pop up in front of the player's vision.
That felt kind of disorganized, so we brought things in for a short time to make it kind of like a taskbar at the bottom, which I think a lot of people are used to, which is why we went that way. You know? It's a lot of phones, a lot of desktops use that.
And also that also wasn't using the player's visual field really. It was just still behaving like a flat computer screen. And so yeah, we did the strange decision of bending
Кстати,
it
все
into a
редукс
horseshoe
собирается.
shape so that it could
Еще оригинал
surround
не
the
прошел.
center
Надеюсь,
of the
если
player or I guess
будут
character's
обновлять, то
visual
оставят
field.
оригинал в библиотеке
Instead
без
of having
сравнения.
it function like an
Это
actual
будет
phone
как
where you have to
новая
like
игра.
look at it, the AR desktop takes advantage of the fact that it's actually
Они
in the
выпустят
world
как
in front of
новая
you, you're
игра,
not holding
там
anything, you don't have to, like,
немного
look down
нового
at an
контента
object,
и
you just be in your
обновленная
peripheral
графика
vision, you can
специально
look
для
from
новых
side to side at
консолей,
it.
ну и
It's
выпустят на
partially
ПК и на
a
Nintendo Switch.
realistic usage scenario and partially also so that the player could actually see
Так
the
что
world
старая игра
while
останется, а
looking
новую
at
надо
it. And
покупать.
yes, it makes a horseshoe bat.
Я тоже не проходил обсервер, можно считать. Вот так вот дождаться новой и пройти уже с немного новым, то, что они добавили.
So this book here is actually written by an AI, one of the major Venturas AIs, called Fand, who's in charge of Cure Body City State. Fand is really the only other positive, successful seeming AI that acts the most human in our fiction. She's written this book here about how she came to, reorganize her domain.
But it's also kind of like a philosophical book about mindfulness, which I think is a really interesting aspect of consciousness for an AI to be thinking about and to become an authority on. This book was something that Carla put together. We had agreed that we were like, oh, we should have a book that was written by an AI to show more of what different AIs are in our world, so it doesn't just seem like it's Odin.
Yeah.
And then I guess there's other AIs, but to actually have some examples. And so, this was Carla's version of, what is an interesting additional perspective for an AI to represent. And I thought this almost like enlightened Buddhist seeming perspective that this AI presumably has developed over years and years of observation and kind of examining its own ways of working and how people relate to each other and stuff. Felt like a legitimate thing that could happen with the concept of AI, but definitely not something that we had seen anywhere else within our fictional world.
Я на СГВ, может, с индексом даже 60 может быть. Well, design.
So this is medical.
Как они это
So it has facilities like exam room, but it also has kind of storage for med supplies and any device that would be needed to check in on people medically. Very early on, the design of the space came from the story as it was at the time. So the story was written where Sarah and Andrew went through kind of a dramatic arc here, and that dramatic arc had moments, and those moments built so that the place was designed around making those moments happen in a very specific order. So what happened is we did that. We made a space where you're watching the AR scene and Sarah goes off into a room, but the room is locked, and you can't get through the locked door until you go watch another part of the scene and get a key to unlock it. And to build that and to make them walk a certain way and go off in a certain area, building the space to the AR scene ended up with this very awkward space. So we ended up scrapping that, but it did take trying it to go, let's design a space to the AR scene, and where we ended up was much more functional to the purpose of the wing and who would work there and who would live there and how would they live and how would they work.
And I really like that sort of a neat outcome of having the AR scene blocked out in a space that already existed specifically in this wing in medical, is that you have moments like sort of later in the scene when Nat and Bert are having their little like flirtatious moment where Nat jumps onto Bert. She sort of like tackle hugs her. There's this interesting outcome where that happens in one room, and then it just so happens that Sarah's office is literally on the other side of the wall. So if you stand in Sarah's office and are standing sort of next to Sarah when Nat tackle hugs Bert, you can hear that through the wall. And Sarah and Andrew actually do react to that in the scene. And I thought that's like kind of a fun outcome. Like, we didn't plan that. That's just kind of how the AR scene ended up playing out based on how the space is laid out.
Так, тут ничего ловить. Чувак, у тебя головы нет.
You as a player might notice a few different references to Tina in the game. There's the screaming Tina that you might see on the specialty cocktails board in the kitchen, which you then may later discover refers to the skeleton here in Med, that you can put the skull back on the skeleton and then put the hat on the skull, and the hat is labeled Tina, which means the skeleton's name is Tina. But all of this Tina nonsense is a reference to our next door office mate. The office that we made Tacoma in is in an old building with thin walls, and there was a company next door to ours that we would hear this woman screaming through the wall, with some frequency, either because she was so angry or so amused by things.
Just shrieking, like, most of the time.
A lot of the time. Tina was very energetic.
Yeah.
So to be clear, her name wasn't Tina.
No.
Steve
just made it up at one point.
We were like, we always hear this woman screaming through the wall of our office. We have to be able to refer to her as something.
Rather than like go over and introduce ourselves and like ask her what her name was, we were like, well, we'll just name this phenomenon Tina.
And part of that is because there were two women that worked in the office next door to ours. And so since we only ever heard the screaming through the wall, we didn't know who in the office it actually was. And so for years, we were conjecturing about which of the women in that office was Tina. And then they moved out, like shortly before the end of the development of Tacoma. And one day, soon before they moved out, I heard Tina's voice screaming and saying, "Oh my fucking god!" over on one side of the office. And then Tina, on the other side of the office, respond with, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And I realized it was both of them, and they both screamed like that all the time, and that's why we heard so much screaming over there.
So they had a corporate culture of screaming.
So we wanted to pay homage to Tina in the game. We figured a screaming skeleton was probably a good way to do that. Thanks, Tina.
Вкуснятинка.
We were really grateful to have some friends in the industry and artists that we know contribute some cool pieces of art to the game. For instance, the pinup poster in Bert's locker in the locker room was by Mariel Cartwright, who was the lead animator on Skullgirls and is the art director of the game Indivisible. And then very nearby to that, there's the cover of the Zero Spiel ebook on Sarah's desktop, which is like a multi-layered reference because in Firewatch they were kind enough to put one of the books from Gone Home findable in their game. Ollie Moss, who was Firewatch's art director and did the book covers for the 1 through 10 books for that game, did a really cool kind of visual pun roulette wheel space station book cover for Zero Spiel in Tacoma. Also, some of us did drawings for the game.
Our programmer Hannah did programmer art for Nat. She ghost drew Nat's doodles.
And drew those very good Tyrannosauruses. And in Nat's office, you can find a bunch of post-it notes on her desk that are just different little doodles of Odin. And we actually assigned Hannah to just draw doodles of Odin over the course of a few months while she was at her desk waiting for builds to finish or whatever. And then one day she just handed us a bunch of sticky notes and was like, "Here they are." And now they're on Nat's desk. Carla did all of Andrew's drawings, so his sketches from life of flowers and
his orchids
statues
and stuff like that. And also Nicholas's doofy drawing of Andrew floating in space and yelling at him about homework.
Right. And then I did Bert's drawing of Nat that you find next to Bert's workstation. So yeah, we have this thing where we have different individual people play different characters through their handwriting, and sometimes we have them play different characters through their drawing.
Как они тут что делали и создавали, но надо ли оно, то не все. Тут и в самой игре куча информации.
Okay, Odin, ready? I'm gonna do it this time.
Играет и стреляет в виртуальные какие-то самолетики. Игрок 1, игрок 2. Еще в кооперативе играет. Без жизни. И чтобы очередь гулять, то игрок стоит ждет. Приложеньки. Там с другой стороны какой-то пытался. Синхронности до 2089 или что-то написано. Ага. 10-2089. Окей.
So a lot of Tacoma's character dynamics are about trust and who trusts who with what in what context, all those sorts of things. I think we see a lot of that in the botany module specifically. We see, you know, Evie telling the crew, here's our plan and it's going to work, and then when she's in private with Clive saying, this plan isn't going to work, like, what are you thinking? And then I think that you can kind of contrast how both Andrew and Sarah trust and confide in Odin, but Sarah confides in Odin as, like, a personality, and Andrew confides in Odin with, like, his real worries, right, and saying, what I've said is we should just trust the company and do what they say, and then as soon as I'm alone in a room with Odin, I'm saying, how likely is it really that they're going to come pick us up? How sure should I be about this, even though I'm acting totally sure in front of everybody else?
Yeah, and Andrew doesn't quite treat Odin like a person.
Right.
But, like, yeah, he's at least confident in Odin's ability to not spill his information.
Right. He trusts Odin as a source of information.
Right.
And as, this
as an
thing.
analyst,
this thing that he can acknowledge his own uncertainty in front of, in a way that he wouldn't in front of a human.
Right,
in
like
this situation.
That sort of, like, your pet doesn't care if you're wearing pants kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's that.
True.
Andrew doesn't wear his pants in front of Odin. The end.
Andrew isn't wearing pants the entire game.
And you didn't know it.
How could you?
Everybody was cool with it.
Then get the hell out of your way as quickly as possible. Time is oxygen, people. Break.
I can't believe everybody... along with this.
I'll head downstairs and
I
get
didn't
started
expect them
on
to either.
Oh my god.
Okay.
So now we actually have to build this
Hey,
thing.
Andrew. Clive.
Andrew.
Wanna
Yeah.
talk?
Sure, Evie.
Are you okay?
Evie!
Кажется, по своим делам пошел, все трендят, и все это записывается.
Hey, Evie. Hey, I know you're all like gung-ho to help us out and everything, but I did the math. If we could get this done in like 48 hours, not 72.
Could the rest of us wait longer to go in?
Exactly.
Listen, ladies, I get it. You're trying to do right by us, but every minute we wait to go in is a minute you don't have to get this thing flying. And knowing what we know about VT, we've got to give you every chance we can to succeed.
So there's no way we can convince you?
We made a plan. Now we just need to hold up our end of the bargain.
Then I guess we should stop wasting time and get to work.
This is gonna be good, Evie. You just wait. Ride of your life.
In more ways than one.
I didn't think things would end like this. Did you?
What do you mean, end?
Come on, Clive.
What?
You really think they can turn that thing into a passenger vehicle in 2 days? We might as well hold our breath and just try dog paddling over there.
But
listen, it's okay. We know it's not safe working up here. We just don't think about it a lot, but here we are. And we knew it all along.
But VT could...
VT's not fucking coming, Clive! VT's not fucking coming. You think sending a crew up here at the drop of a hat just to check on things is worth it to them? Dollars and cents, Clive. You know what one of those fuckers said to me one time? If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. Them sending a crew up in time, it just doesn't make sense.
So you're just giving up then?
No. We're doing what we said we'd do. Bert and...
Вы сами по себе чёчки. Так, погодите, надо медика посмотреть. Печаль, конечно. Никто не прилетел им помогать, выслали меня. Просто походить. Что-то поделать. Кстати, как я дышу? А, точно, я в скафандре же даже. Точно. У меня же свой личный кислород в скафандре. А где медик найду? А, он же тут, наверное. Или нет. Ты? Нет, не ты. Нет. Так, где? Может, внизу? Тут бегать нельзя. Седать можно, но бегать нельзя. Так, чё, ребятки, ты ботаник, а где медик? Чуваки, где медик?
This weird little stone is Andrew's shaping stone that he's been working on. Stone shaping is a sort of meditative practice that we made up.
True.
That you're supposed to basically just take some kind of like relatively soft stone in a vaguely spherical chunk and just like rub it with your hands, like so that it slowly is worn down into a smooth shape.
Yeah. Andrew's family kind of brought this meditative practice with them, and then he is carrying it on and lived it and practiced it in his own life.
And that's concretized by the fact that 2 of the stones up in his office belonged to his grandmother, and that she had actually worked on them for her entire life. Also, we have Andrew's cigarettes here because he's a secret smoker, much like Nat, and smoking like normal cigarettes would be an incredibly terrible idea in a space station. Like, you don't want to have an open flame anywhere on a space station where you rely on oxygen to, be there. So we thought smoking was expressive enough that we wanted to have cigarettes anyway. And so we made up a variety of cigarettes that did not actually flame, but
they are self-vaporizing effectively. Right. So I think what we posited was that they had microscopic electric filaments in them, and then when you like drew on them with your breath, it would activate those filaments and vaporize part of the cigarette, and that's what you're smoking.
So they heat, but they don't, like, they never cause it to actually catch fire.
Послушал. Так, окей, что тут по сюжетке?
That, they are our only shot and we have got to take it. But I can also be realistic that...
Evie, I don't want to be realistic with you.
На 4-х станциях.
Well, time to go make final preparations then.
But not too finally. You know, I'm picturing it. The day we'll be walking together, like this. But the gravity, it won't be artificial. I mean, isn't it strange? We've never felt the Earth's pull together. One day.
One day.
Так, ботаника. Все, я тебе поговорил, ты открыл свою панельку. И пришло на то, чё. Что-то у них на станции пипец. Так, пойду дослушаю.
Oh, Evie. Do you think you could get everyone to medical? I want to make sure they've got the best shot at waking back up once they do go in.
All right. How about this? Let's give folks a little time to regroup. But why don't Clive and I follow you over there right now and get ours done? No time like the present.
Lead the way.
What? Они ушли за зону записи.
Evie, Hello?
Это они
I'll catch up
слиняли.
with you all later then.
Они ушли. Так, окей, давай что-нибудь еще включу. Plants on Tacoma.
So Carla hooked us up with a botanist, and we chatted about what plants would be good to grow in the space station.
Yes.
And she was like, well, this is the sort of lighting conditions that would be good for plants, and if you're looking for something highly protein-based, then you should grow some amaranth, and, she suggested all these plants that would be good in, like, low-level lighting, etc. And then I put a bunch of squash in there and tomatoes and stuff that wasn't at all what she suggested.
Well, the other thing though is that like we have the grow lights for them.
Yeah.
Like they don't need to grow in natural, space station light. And we also totally did take their advice with the just oxygen producers, like the snake plants and everything. Those are legit, real life NASA choices.
Yes. They filtered formaldehyde.
The other thing is that our station didn't have to actually run on just plants,
Yeah. If you know what the rules are, then you can break them all over the place, I suppose. Or decide to throw them out the window.
записи, собрала. Конечно, не все у разработчиков послушал. Так, теперь меня отправляют в инженерный отсек. Хорошо. Не знаю, слушать все, слушать. Некоторые интересные, некоторые скучные. What meat?
1, 2, 3.
That meat. It even sounded bad like that meat.
That's because it is bad. I mean, it's also good.
It's very good.
I mean,
Powerfully bad.
obviously.
The way we were looking at it was, if you're on this long posting, then like fresh food would be one of the most desirable things that you could have. And so they have the tomatoes and the squash and the mushrooms, and then also in our fiction, what we speculate is that the vast majority of all meat that would be eaten on Earth is produced in a lab, not in a factory farm, because that's become much more efficient than producing animals. And so also they can use that process on the space station, so they can produce meat protein right on site and turn it into whatever meals they want.
Why not? Why not fat meat?
They also make terrible noises. Whenever you go near these things, they do a lot of squooshing and squanching.
Thanks to Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick, for making our vat meat grosser than necessary.
Oh, it's necessary.
Exactly as gross as necessary.
Precisely. Fat meat.
It's good.
Sure it is.
Чудо. Говорится, так записать буквально. Так, я тоже послушал. Тут посмотрел, тут у нас код, чтобы спуститься вниз, уже использовал. Что тут скажем? Паническая атака. Поэтому насмотрел на эту фотку.
Sarah's panic attack also came late in the development of the game. I think it was actually the last AR scene that got written. Botany had originally been a much shorter sequence, and we wanted to expand it to include more characterization between Evie and Clive in the tea garden, and to give Andrew more time with Odin to kind of talk through how he was really feeling after he and Sarah split off.
And commensurately.
Right, that left
that
this
left
space
us with time,
where we knew that we wanted Sarah to meet up with Evie and Clive at the end of the scene, so she couldn't just leave. But she had to go do something. And that led us to say, what's she doing in this time gap? And, Sarah has, I think, a lot of... she takes on a lot of that responsibility of having suppressed her own outward emotion to be, taking care of the crew. She's the doctor, but also she's trying to hold this plan together, and she has people confiding in her that she's kind of holding all these things, inside. And we wanted to have this moment where it's just her and Odin, and her being able to actually externalize how hard this is for her, and have Odin help her through that in this way that shows this isn't the first time that this happened. They have this kind of familiar ritual that they go through when Sarah needs help.
Yeah, I think that personal emotional displays like this just feel a lot more engaging to us than, for example, characters screaming at each other because they've lost patience and stuff like that. I think that there's something about seeing what happens to a person when they're by themselves under stress, or I suppose with an AI.
Yeah.
But there's something there that is, it feels like it rings true.
I'm not doing it. I'm not getting in cryo. I'm gonna be the same one here. Nobody even considered that VT might come pick us up in time if we just wait. Nobody even considered it.
Just don't talk to anybody else about this for now, okay? And if I were to call the crew into medical, you'd show up, right?
I guess it depends what it is.
Okay. Just give me a little time. Odin, I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out.
Close your eyes.
I did already.
A light wind rustles the green tall grass. Your skirt billows gently. Warm sun caresses your back.
Yes.
You begin walking forward. The grass is cool. Your feet parted with each step. Do you see what is in front of you?
As I step through the grass, I naturally come upon a path.
Yes.
The dirt of the path is soft on the soles of my feet. I don't know what's going to happen to us, Odin.
Sarah.
I am striding forward confidently upon my appointed path. Wherever it takes me is where I am meant to be. I am striding confidently on my appointed path.
Sarah?
Yes, Odin?
Are you going to be all right?
I think so. Oh, Evie. Do you think you could get everyone to medical? Give me a little time.
Hey, Odin?
Yes, Andrew?
What should I do?
What do you mean?
I don't know. I just want to go home.
I understand.
Do you?
I believe that I do.
Can you tell me the average time it's taken VT to send an evac crew to investigate situations like this?
The average time between a remote facility losing ground contact and an investigative crew arriving on site is 98.4 hours.
God damn it.
Please try not to be worried, Andrew.
That's easy for you to say. You don't have lungs. So, what do you think we should do?
Standard operating procedure requires all crew to engage cryogenic hibernation until help arrives.
Yeah, you know people die in cryo, right?
I know. Sometimes.
If we don't make it out of this, can you deliver a message to my family?
I will do everything in my power.
Okay. I'll send you something later, all right?
Of course.
Well, looks like this'll work. Give us a few extra hours anyway. Thanks, Odin. Hello? Guess I'll catch up with you all later then.
This is one of 3 places in the game where you can decipher a code for a key code door by observing one of the characters in the AR scene actually inputting it.
We didn't initially have that as like a mechanical concept.
That's right. That is something that we had initially only had like go find the code somewhere and bring it back, but we saw playtesters like watching when the characters go through the door and looking at the key code, input pad and being like, oh, I was really hoping I could just figure it out from watching them. So we were like, we can do that. Yeah. So, that was the point where we were like, we don't want to cut the other ways to get the code that are in the game. We want there to be multiple ways to do it. Because I think there's this feeling of, even if you get every code by just watching the character put it in, but then later you see that code somewhere else and you're like, oh, I could have gotten it this way. That's a cool feeling for the player to know that there was more than one way that they could have solved that problem. They see evidence of it, and kind of the way they got through it was up to how they were playing. Yeah.
So in Tacoma, one of the interesting things we got to do with the scenes is have characters interact with the world, but the world is in a different state than it was when the characters were interacting with it. So the difference between the world that you're looking at and the world that the characters were inhabiting is hopefully visible via their actions, but not in any other way.
Right.
Yeah, here in the irrigation room, there's a good example of this where if you're watching Andrew when he's talking to Sarah, there's one point where he is walking across the room and it looks like he's holding something, and it happens to be the hose that's on the ground, and you'll see the characters at the beginning walking through the hose. And then later in the scene, once he had hooked up the hose across the room, you'll see the characters step over it. So that's kind of a good example of showing both states.
Yeah, there's some other places where you only see the aftermath, like in medical, the storage room is all messed up and the shelves are knocked down, and that's what happens at the very end of the scene. But yeah, in irrigation here, you actually get to see the before and the after and the during kind of all in one place.
Yeah, the only other one I can think of is the drone, which when it explodes, it gets tilted on its stand, and so everyone's interacting with it in slightly the wrong place.
Right, and Bert is climbing up a ladder that has fallen
been knocked
onto
over
the floor and stuff like
and
that.
Using controls that are touching things that are now covered by what's that stuff called?
Foam.
Yeah.
Good commentary.
Just say foam again like that.
Oh, foam. There's a few different specific callbacks to our last game, Gone Home, in Tacoma. We are pretty directly implying that they take place in the same universe because there's a gardening book written by Sam's mom from Gone Home that you can also find here in the Botany Wing. So some of them are pretty direct. But this one that we're near right now...
It's pretty direct also.
It's fairly direct, but it's not the same object. It's just a mug that says jazz on it.
You think people have jazz mugs in real life?
Well, a lot of people do now. They bought them from Topatico.com.
Son of a gun.
We made it happen. We ruined people's kitchens.
It's true.
But
we don't have this for merchandise.
No.
Don't get excited about that.
As far as direct Gone Home callbacks go, there's the Janice Greenbrier book, there's the jazz mug, and then there's the Christmas duck that you find in the empty storage bunk in the network technology module
and it
later
lights
in the game. That's true. And
unlike
it plays a little
book.
song for you, yeah.
Or the jazz mug.
True, nothing
Honestly.
else lights up and plays you a little song.
What a ripoff.
The AR game in Andrew's bunk is called Spitfire Returns, which is implied to be a sequel to Super Spitfire that you found in Gone Home, which is the Super Nintendo version of the kind of vector graphics Spitfire game that is playable in Minerva's Den for BioShock 2. So that's the one thing that actually in a lot of ways carries through the most directly from all three of those titles. The basketball Easter egg, I guess, is something that we took from System Shock 2 as an homage in Gone Home and then carried forward into Tacoma as well.
We didn't put it in Minerva's Den.
Yeah, there's no basketballs.
We did a bad job. Should have made one.
Sorry, everybody.
You're not sorry.
I know.
So the tea garden at the end of the long hall here in Botany, if you go there, it's one of the few places in the station where it's almost entirely window. Hopefully some people caught it. There's a small and completely serendipitous result, which is when you're actually looking out here and you wait for the other wings to come around, you can see the burst oxygen tanks that are a central plot point. And in fact, you can see those from any place in the game. If you look out the window, they're there from the very first second of the game. But it was just kind of an accident. We built this whole wing, and we were deciding how to align the station in respect to how the wing was lined up. And I did this accidentally and put this right here because I really wanted to look out onto the solar panels of the station. And then I just saw the tanks kind of drift by slowly, so it was pretty cool.
So the propulsion suits are never actually called out in the lore of the game, but the idea behind them is that each crew member has a couple of them in their bunks, and that they're used to sort of traverse the central hub, which is a microgravity environment, unlike the rest of the station. So they have little air jets placed in the fabric of strategic areas, kind of on the arms, the hips, and the legs. And there's little jets that the user move in kind of a controlled way through this giant space. And it also lets us make like a uniform for the Tacoma station that we can kind of personalize with like a name tag for each crew member. I did a little concept for them. It's just the idea behind them was sort of like a space coverall. Something not too glamorous, but it's fun. I got to use ZBrush, which is a sort of like a clay sculpting program, and sort of snuck them in everyone's closet.
So, about the visual design, I feel like a lot of the design came from, the art side.
Yeah. Well, Rebecca Mock gave us the concept art. Rebecca's a great concept artist, and she does comics as well, and does illustrations for editorial work. The exterior of the station was one of her designs, and basically I was very lucky because I just got to look at her work and try and replicate it, or translate it, in so much as, she's used to drawing in a 2D way, and I have to translate that into this crazy 3D model. But yeah, it was definitely the biggest model I worked with, and probably the most. I came back to it for the most revisions over the course of about a year or so, and it's a big one. At the end, I was like, okay, it's a little overwhelming, but seeing it now moving and whatnot, and all hooked up, it's pretty cool.
When you look at a character's collection of books, like when you look at Sarah's books here in her office, I think that we tried to reinforce some of the themes or some of the characters' main concerns or interests or anxieties through what they had on their bookshelves. So with Sarah, she's a doctor, so she has health and nutrition and doctor stuff, but she also is a reader and a thoughtful person, so she has fiction and poetry, and she also has a lot of anxiety, so there's sort of both meditation and books specifically about dealing with anxiety, and she also comes from a Muslim background, and I think through the books you get the idea that she looks at her faith from almost like an academic perspective or an analytical perspective, and I think you can tell that almost exclusively through looking at what kinds of books she keeps in her personal spaces.
Additionally, we got to project some of our own likes and dislikes onto the characters, because, in order to fill out someone's library, it's pretty hard to keep everything completely on topic.
Right.
I believe Nina requested the William Carlos Williams book, and a couple others here and there.
And we have Alice Munro and
Margaret Atwood.
And Margaret Atwood.
And Deepness in the Sky is one of my favorites.
Tacoma Station went through this big overhaul partway through development. And the first version of the station was this microgravity station where everything floated, there was no gravity whatsoever. And so it was designed as such. It was designed like the ISS, so that objects like the sinks in the toilets were to be used in microgravity. So, when a user or a crew member was, using them, they wouldn't spray water all over the place. They wouldn't float away when they were trying to actually use the toilet, it would be an actual concern. And so they do look a little strange. They're kind of legacy objects in the grand scheme of things, in that they are some of the earliest models in the game. And the medical bed is another. Originally, it used to have little foot braces, and it still has the straps of back in the day when one of the first rooms we actually made in the old station was the doctor's room, Sarah's room. And so we added those details so that a patient wouldn't float away. So the straps are still there, and actually the toilet's got a reskin. But why we still kept those models in the game is just because, when you're doing small independent development, there's only so much bandwidth that you have, and the time it takes to actually redoing an entire model is not insubstantial, especially when there's only one or two full-time modelers on the crew. So we reskin them and we kept them, and it's one of those things where you got to pick your battles. And surely, I kind of like them, so it's I'm not too worried about it.
Unlike in a lot of popular fiction, our version of cryogenic stasis is not something you can do long term. It's not like in Alien where you just kind of are out for a few years and wake up in some star system. It's much more unstable and short term than that.
Yeah. You're in cryo so that you can get to surgery, but not so that you can just be preserved for an indefinite amount of time. Yeah. What we're seeing in the crew medical charts that are here in the exam room is the idea that most people in the situation of the crew is in, if they had to go into cryo for, a couple or a few days, they would probably be fine. But part of that, in the case of the crew of Tacoma, is that most people in developed countries in our fiction get a selection of gene filtering procedures done to them, like in utero. And it's sort of along the lines of people getting vaccines now, but it's being able to tweak people's genes to make them not be susceptible to certain congenital illnesses or other conditions. But when you look at these charts, it turns out that Nat never had any gene filtering done, and so because of her condition, it makes it much, much more dangerous for her as an individual.
Yeah, I think we figured out that mitral stenosis would be a particularly dangerous condition to have if you were going to be basically hypothermic for long periods of time. That's actually like a real danger, so... So there's a lot of QR codes in the game on various packages and communications and other things like that. And basically, I think we just chose them as a method for information storage just because they're so annoying. Like, nobody likes QR codes. It's totally the kind of choice that a big company like Venturis or any other of the big companies in the game would choose. And we also really liked the idea that the player could actually scan them and get additional information. Usually that's just like, you know, ingredients or something, but occasionally there's some cute stuff in there.
Something that was really interesting to think about when designing these scenes was there are points in these scenes where there are no characters in certain rooms. So for instance, here in the locker room, Sarah starts here and then she has part of her scene here and she leaves. And presumably most players will follow her and see where she goes and see how she encounters Andrew. But you might think, well, wait a second, if I was to go into the locker room and wait for Sarah to leave, you're thinking about what might be there. So in each of the main AR scenes, there's one of these AR speakers, and while the characters are there in that space engaged in part of the story, there's music playing in the background from these speakers that kind of accompanies what they're doing. But after they've left, if you hang out with the speaker, you'll hear one of these speeches from Sergio Venturi, the CEO of the Venturis Corporation in the game. And it's something that I hope that players who either intentionally seek these out or just stumble upon one will have that spark of surprise at this extra thing being there and go back and see where else they can find more and really fill out the rest of the story's universe with these little hidden pieces that are kind of, you know, under the surface of what's going on in the AR scenes. In a game that uses traditional audio diaries, the shape of the space is still the shape of the story, because you go into a room and you find certain audio diaries, then you go into the next room and you find them, and so that is defining the progression of the story as you discover it. But in these AR scenes, they're multi-path, like different characters are moving all over the space in kind of a non-linear way.
And things are happening simultaneously.
Right, there's all this overlap where, you know, two characters might be, you know, in the gym together speaking, but one of them is talking on an AR call and the other one is in the locker room, and they're having two totally separate conversations, but then that have to take the same amount of time so that when their paths connect, they can then speak to each other and then split off again. And all of that stuff required us to, A, write to the space. Right. So the process was that, like, Nina and Tynan blocked out these spaces and put down where all the rooms were and what spaces we had to work with first before we wrote a single word. And then we had to say, okay, you've got the locker room, the gym, cargo, and so then who is where and what are they saying and how long is it going to take Evie to walk from cargo to Clive's office, and what's he doing before she gets there? Because there is no... It doesn't matter what she's doing before he gets there because the player will never know. It's like the player can be there. Yeah, we have to fill in all of those spaces.
Right. He can't just sit there and wait for, like, the action to start happening. He has to do something. And so, and of course, when we tried to write all of this stuff out with, like, these parallel paths, we were totally unable to make everything match up until we physically acted out everything.
Yeah.
And did all the lines ourselves.
Yeah, it was a huge kind of experimental process, I guess, of first discovering how you write it, where you're like, okay, so you have to write each of the sections kind of as its own little scene and then make sure that they all link up. And then to test that, something that was great for us was that we actually had a similar sized development team to the size of the crew in the game. And so, yeah, we had to go from words on the page to actually doing basically like dry run rehearsals of it as a group, because you can't really know if the timing of everything lines up until you hear it acted out and you see how the characters moving in the scene are going to affect the timing of everything.
In our game, characters keep having to deal with something called corporate loyalty, which is the most nightmarish form of like value accrual we could think of.
Yeah, I mean, it's influenced by things that are going on now, things like Amazon Prime, for instance, where it's like, well, I'm already paying for Amazon Prime and it gives me a discount, so I should probably just buy everything through Amazon forever.
Also, somebody totally tweeted a link to an article like yesterday about corporate universities.
Something that's interesting about releasing like a speculative fiction thing is that people start bringing you links to things that are like, so this is actually happening in reality now. And yeah, like someone tweeted us a banner ad that was like, unironically, like in our real world, like use company loyalty to pay for student loans.
Yeah.
And it's just like the degree to which things like the concept of corporate loyalty being the currency of people's everyday lives was conceived as being like a very broad extrapolation of something that's happening now becoming way too literal, way too fast is pretty freaky to encounter.
I did learn to make some shaders, some custom shaders for Tacoma. So the character's look has changed a lot since we first started working on Tacoma. The story also changed a little bit, and originally there was a character that was supposed to look glitched and corrupt compared to the main characters. And when I made that character, I worked with vertex distortion, and so they look kind of wiggly as they're moving around. And it turned out that Steve and Carla really liked that look, and so we implemented that into all the other characters' shaders. So anyway, so that's why they kind of have like a distorted look as they're walking around. And from there, a bunch of other things were added, like when they walk through another mesh or touch another mesh. Like if they're touching the table, their fingers will kind of glow. And if they're walking through a door, their bodies will kind of glow as they're walking through the door mesh. So yeah, good old shaders.
talk to them right before I went to cross. Going cars. All their.
What?
Right before first.
Maybe.
Where's the clock? And I just keep thinking. This time the other. Each other. Okay.
So, you know, thing from so drive. One system and storage. Maybe you'd contain might be unstable that you otherwise kind of, you know, wanted not to interfere with it. There are things they partitioned off. Thinking about what's gonna happen.
But you're
I about how faster thinking we should
So this is one of the areas that you get into by using a physical key, which is only a couple of in the game. But there's a few different ways that we lock off information. There's physical keys and there's key code doors, and sometimes there's just stuff that's harder to find because of where it's placed. Because there is this hierarchy of accessibility or findability of space, we also tend to map that towards kind of the deeper or more obscure,
more ancillary, you know, less central, I guess.
Right. Less central, but hopefully more valuable to people who are looking to find all of the detail in the game, right? Like, the thing you're doing as a designer is you have this contract with the player that says, like, if you follow us through all of these prompts, if you see a key, it's saying you can go use it, and if you go use it, you'll get something that made you happy that you actually bothered. And if we
worth your time.
Right. And if we waste your time and say, like, haha, there was nothing in there, or you were like, well, I already knew that, why did I go to all this trouble? Then, like, the next time you see a key, you're not going to want to use it. And then we've lost someone who otherwise might want to actually engage with all this stuff that we put in front of you.
We want to safeguard the player's goodwill and interest.
And value their the time that they're putting into the game, you know, and the effort that they're putting into the game.
It's a fun challenge sometimes to make something that is juicy enough to be like, oh, I am glad I found that, but that is not, you know, what the character specifically hangs on.
So with regards to art direction, when we originally conceived of the station, we were talking about wall colors for each of the wings, and we wanted each wing to be the color of the crew member who lived in it. So, Evie's is purple, so originally the kitchen was as a nice purple color, and the wing you're standing in now in engineering would be orange to match Bert, etc. But 6 colors is a lot of colors, and so in the interest of simplicity, we chose just one central color for each of the 3 wings. And they're not particularly tied to any character. They're just, nice to look at or evoked a nice feeling. So green for personnel, blue for biomed, and an industrial-ish orange for engineering. Paring things down or opting for simplicity is something that I, as an art person, I found I rarely regret. And especially as it pertains to player flow, the idea of having 6 different colors, I could see how that would get confusing after a while. And so we sort of opted to go the way that we did, and I think that it really helps with regards to landmarking. You realize you're in the same wing, and then you'll traverse to a different wing, and it's a different color, and you're in a different area. So I'm glad that we sort of simplified things the way we did.
The reason we made the sync device functionality be so obscured to the player was because early in development we were having trouble with progression systems and keys and locks, and people getting too focused in on locks that we were setting up in the game and sort of ignoring the story to find passwords and stuff. So the sync device was sort of a solution for us to have a gating system, but one that the player didn't feel like they needed to spend all their time paying attention to, because the idea is that it's almost like a USB stick where you're downloading stuff, and that's the kind of thing that just takes time and that you don't have to pay attention to, and people generally know that who use computers know that kind of paradigm. So that was sort of the original idea for why the sync device is sort of this obscure thing that's just downloading away. Why we're not having you have to keep track of every single little thing you're doing and how it affects the percentage. It doesn't really matter. It's just about you exploring the space and not having to worry about it.
The hope is that you stand in front of it and you plug the sync device in and you watch it tick slowly to 0.1 and then you're like, oh well,
yeah,
no, I'm gonna go look at other stuff.
yeah, exactly.
I'll catch up with you.
Okay.
Earlier, when you decided to withhold... information from Natalie about her medical scans. That was to avoid causing her undue stress.
Right.
What if you were unable to make that choice? If you had no choice?
Odin?
I would like to take this opportunity to remind you that Standard Venturis Corporation safety protocol requires all crew to enter cryogenic sleep immediately upon the loss of primary oxygen supply.
What?
As Tacoma Station's medical officer, it is within your power to order all crew to enter cryogenic sleep.
Odin, Nat and Bert are right in the middle of... Oh no.
Sarah, there is a fire suppression device. Wall of the drone, babe.
Oh my god. Are you okay? Can you feel your feet and hands?
Ow. My hip just hurts.
Bert? Bert! 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 1, 2, 3. Bert, can you hear me? 1, 2, 3. Did it work?
What will you do now?
I'm going to fly.
Then tell me what you are going to do.
Oh my god, Odin. Bert and Nat are injured. The drone is fucked. I'm going to give them a little time to get over the shock, but then we're going into cryo.
Sarah, please listen carefully. I am not telling you what to do, but I am mentioning that there is a door in the network technology module that is normally inaccessible to the crew, and it is true that you could, before proceeding to cryo, investigate that door.
What are you telling me here, Odin?
I have told you all that I can. Simple facts, nothing more.
Oh my god, Odin. Are my patients stable?
Yes.
Their conditions won't degrade if I leave them here?
They should not.
Nat, is there some door in networking that we can't normally get into?
Yeah, it's Odin's hardware compartment, but we're not allowed direct access. Why?
Where is it?
What have you got on your mind, Doc?
Please, I'm sorry. That fire just burned up a lot of our time.
Here. It's here. In networking. You'll have to go through the maintenance shaft to get there. Here's the technical access code.
Okay. You don't let her go to sleep. And you don't let her... move.
Sarah, what's going on?
I wish I knew. I'm gonna go find out.
Something that players with a keen eye for game development history might notice when they're playing Tacoma is the presence of a character named Roberta Williams. That's Bert's full name. And people have asked, is that a reference to Roberta Williams, the creator of King's Quest and co-founder of Sierra Online? And the answer is yeah, of course it is. I tend to enjoy when occasionally in fiction there's a fictional character that quote unquote just happens to have the same name as a real world historical figure or famous person or whatever, Sheriff Harry S. Truman in Twin Peaks or something like that. And so I kind of wanted to do that. And also, Roberta Williams as a figure in the industry was a really influential person in both her work as a game designer and writer, and one of the very, very first originators of the graphical adventure game with the King's Quest series. And so anyway, we see, I think, what we do with games like Tacoma as kind of having one foot in traditional adventure games and one foot in immersive sim influenced, games that come from the Looking Glass tradition of games like Thief and System Shock. Being able to put, a little bit of an homage and a tip of the hat to Roberta Williams in the game and kind of acknowledge, I think, the reverberations that her work have had even on, stuff that we're doing now was a cool opportunity to have. In Tacoma, one of the things that we wanted to acknowledge was to have some evidence of how geopolitical changes had happened over time. And so, when you look at, for instance, the flags over Bert's workstation, or when you look at the crew IDs that you can find all throughout the station, the parts of the world that people hail from are not one-to-one with countries or city-states or nation-states necessarily that exist in those forms today. We, I think, only know as much about our fictional universe as we need to, which in many cases is more than we put into the game and more than a player could know just from playing it, but it's also only as much as we need to know.
Because we only know where the story touches.
We know enough to know what we can refer back to in the text.
Right.
I think that we know that the DEC exists because we knew that Andrew was from New York, and we needed a region name for where New York is now. But we don't have a ton of knowledge about what's going on in parts of the world that the game doesn't touch. But hopefully there's still enough of territory surrounding what you actually see in the game that the player kind of gets glimpses of, that you get a feeling of sort of cohesive external
richness.
world.
Yeah.
I like Nat and Bert's bunk. We tried to make each bunk feel very different from the rest. They all have a different footprint. They all have a different, color and aesthetic to them, as best as we could do. But I think that Nat and Bert's bunk might be one of the more successful. They have sort of a high number of unique assets, like the weird floppy gel animal. They have the mouth guard, and mouth guard is directly modeled on my own mouth guard. I was holding it in my hand as I sculpted it, so in a way, those are my teeth in the game. They also have the sex toys. There's the vibrator and the rope. Just the mural on the wall is kind of interesting. So I think, it's one of the more interesting bunks to visit. Nat and Bert's bunk, I give it 5 stars.
Yeah, Bert, in fact, is engaged with decorating their room in the AR fragment that's here. It's kind of an externalization of Bert's desire for something else. You know, Bert's desire to kind of branch off from what she's been trained to do as a mechanical engineer and be able to kind of... yeah, Bert, in fact, is engaged with decorating their room in the AR fragment that's here. It's kind of an externalization of Bert's desire for something else. You know, Bert's desire to kind of branch off from what she's been trained to do as a mechanical engineer and be able to kind of follow her, you know, passion of doing art and being an artist.
Yeah. Or at the very least her interest. But yeah,
right.
It's not really encouraged by Venturas.
Right. But the painting that she's doing is a painting called Luna, that I think is from like sort of the 19th century kind of like pre-Raphaelite school. And we thought it was on theme, being like a lady on a moon.
Yeah,
that, you know,
that's cute.
Bert is very sweet, but her idea was a little on the nose, but that's okay.
I mean, Clive's music is a little on the nose. It's fine.
It's true. We can blame our characters on how horny we are.
That's exactly what we should do. Yes, you're right.
All right.
We're going to talk about filled animals, which there is one of in Tacoma.
And it's like a stuffed animal, but filled with gel?
Right, yeah, it's stuffed with gel.
It's filled, even.
Yeah, it's filled and stuffed simultaneously.
It's gross. Well, I just know that they weren't going to make it for a long, long time. Like, they just weren't in the game. And finally, they came in hot, like, at the very end. Like, we were like, well, we have the model. Like, I'd modeled it at some point, and Noel had rigged it.
Because of all the joints and the wiggliness of the legs, I think it was an interesting time to try to make it behave in a way that was the appropriate amount of terrible.
So yeah, I guess filled animals happened because of our love for plushies and just being jokesters. I think many things in Tacoma came from office jokes and then became serious.
Serious in quotes.
I'll catch up with you.
Okay.
Earlier, when you decided to withhold information.
You gonna need any help with that power cell hookup?
There's this scene in the drone bay between Nat and Bert where the two of them are in this terrible accident together and they're both injured. And this is something where, you know, when we arrived at this being one of the scenes in the game, I kind of naturally had to draw from an experience I had where my wife and I were in a motorbike accident. And, you know, that was a really traumatic, scary experience for me. Yeah, I think probably the hardest part of that to relive or draw from is, you know, there's the part in that scene where Bert is thrown off the ladder and hits her head and is knocked out, and Nat also falls down the ramp, but then she turns and just sees Bert lying there and calls out to her and doesn't get any response. And, you know, I have a very vivid memory. In our accident, a car ran a red light and went right in front of us, and the motorbike went straight into the side of the car. And I was thrown into the intersection, and Rachel just hit the side of the car and ended up basically right where the accident happened. And so, you know, I was thrown probably a couple dozen feet and ended up in the middle of the intersection. And, you know, first I saw that my leg was broken, and I was like, I probably shouldn't look at that anymore. And then I looked over and saw Rachel lying there with her back to me, just like in the fetal position on the ground, just not moving. And, you know, I called out to her, and I didn't know if she was alive or not. And that's a crazy position to be in. And that's the position that Nat was in. It's just like, I see you lying there, I don't know what's happened to you. And I can't. Because I, like, the kind of, like, unbearable moment in that scene where Nat is just, like, dragging herself across the floor to Bert is like something that I didn't do because I started to, and then people ran up to me and were like, stop, like, okay, like, I'm gonna go check on her, you stay here, right? But, you know, that moment of uncertainty when somebody you care about is like clearly injured and you don't know how bad. It was a crazy thing to live through, and I'm glad that, you know, for us it worked out because we're both pretty much fine now. You know, it was one of those things where when I realized I was writing this scene, I kind of knew some of the things that had to go into it, but it doesn't always make it that easy to actually have to, like, live back through to put it into the game.
The drone bay, the bones of it, are based on this wonderful piece of concept art we have by Rebecca Mock, who has long been one of my favorite illustrators. So I wasn't able really to hit all of the details here in our concept art for the final room, but I think, you know, we managed to get the broad strokes of it, and some of the assets like the door up at the top we had to reuse from previous versions of the station or previous areas in the station. But I think it turned out pretty cool and pretty dramatic, and I like this room a lot because it feels like a stage in how theatrical it is, how, like, it has that central focus of the drone itself and the raised areas and basically like actors. And, you know, it was one of the final rooms, I think, to actually come together. But yeah, drone room, I really like it. Nah, I'm good. I'm hooked in. Gonna test the connection.
Okay, great. This will only take a few minutes.
Nah, I'm good. I'm hooked in. Gonna test the connection.
Okay, great. This'll only take a minute.
Power cell showing green. How's yours look, baby?
Voltage adapter in place. Ready to rock.
Hit it.
Oh my god. Are you okay? Can you feel your feet and hands?
My hip just hurts.
Bert! Bert! 1, 2, 3. Bert!
So the bounce lighting is specifically referring to the idea that when the sun comes through in some spaces and hits certain surfaces, we try to make it look like the whole room changes temperature and sometimes warms up. Most rooms that have a large pool of sunlight that moves through actually has a floating point light that's just sitting there, and that point light is one color, and it is on a timer that is linked to the angle of the sun, and when the angle of the sun hits X or Y, it warms up or cools down. And for me, and I don't know if this hit you as well, but it made it feel a lot like a plane. For me, when I'm in a plane and the plane banks or the sun setting or something has changed in the plane and the light starts coming through in a different way, and you see it like go across the ceiling, and then the room temperature changes and it becomes, a little golden, a little orange, and it's just this. You can be, watching a movie in the back of a seat at a plane, and then suddenly you're like, oh, I'm flying through the air.
Yeah, I think it's lovely. I think it's a really nice effect.
We're in mechanical engineering, which is Bert's zone. One of the big considerations when we were working on designing each level in Tacoma, each wing, was how does the player sort of encounter each room and in what order? For example, we have most of the bunks be kind of like tucked away in the back of each wing, usually with sort of an entryway or a longer hallway that kind of separates it from the main working areas.
We did a lot of tricks. For a time, there was even kind of this idea of an airlock where there were 2 doors you had to go through to get to everybody's bedroom. And then you can see in the back, there's an example of an elevation change. We tried as much to make them feel like they were lower or higher than the rest of the space, so you kind of had to go upstairs to get to the bedroom.
And that was so that, we could have these working spaces where we would imagine, Bert would come out and, do her mechanical engineering work during the day, and then going home for her, she at least has this sort of, separation of work and personal space, and not just be, living in your office.
Right.
So, yeah, each wing is sort of designed to have the working spaces be accessible in an order that makes sense, and to have the bunks in the back to give characters a sense of personal space.
This crossword puzzle is sort of an intense repository of extra world building that we didn't get in anywhere else.
It's true. Well, we have a whiteboard in our office that had a bunch of different kind of world building universe details that we had decided on at different points in development.
Yeah.
And only some of them were mentioned naturally in emails or dialogue or whatever. So this crossword was a good place to just sort of jam in a Rosetta Stone of what else is happening on Earth and in orbit that you don't see on Tacoma. Something that's fun about doing speculative fiction is being able to do weird, obscure universe building stuff, but you also never really want to foreground that and make it be understand every detail of our stupid lore. You have to deal with it. But people that actually really care about that stuff are probably willing to do a fictional crossword puzzle to understand like all of the underpinnings of the year 2088.
I don't know if people can do this crossword puzzle if they don't like actually know the answer.
It's true. I think that one challenge with this was just like fitting the clues and a crossword puzzle onto one page.
Yeah, that was legible.
Right, so you could actually read it when you examined it. And I think that there might be a couple fewer lines on the puzzle than there are clues.
That might be.
So I'm sorry if you can't actually complete this crossword puzzle, but the Venturer magazine doesn't really do careful quality control because they don't care.
They don't care at all.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. At one point, I decided to make a variety of beer that was named the same as your small child.
Yes.
It's true.
It was a surprise.
Yeah, did we surprise you with it?
You guys pranked me.
I needed more stuff to put on the packaging because there's always basically infinite things that you have to put on packaging, and I'm like, I can't read that much about your child. What am I gonna do? So I asked Steve for. I was like, do you have any good timing quotes? Because you're a very quotable person. And so Steve looked up some old tweets of yours, and we kind of put them on the beer cans.
You kind of put them on the beer.
Kind of.
So I think we should set up the one detail that's in here.
Oh,
That's very
which
important
one's
to me. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's important, right? I had no idea. So that's why it's a prank. It's not a prank that it's my daughter's name. The real prank
it's all a prank.
Here's your goofy words.
God, they're so good though.
On a can.
Good one.
Was there something special about the wedding ring put back?
Originally, the way that Chivo worked is you had to pick it up and carry it all the way back to the ship, and then you had to finish the game with either it in your hand or it just kind of within the confines of the ship, so there was a tracker volume, but now you just click it and it's implied that Amy like puts it in her pocket.
I see. That's cool. Yeah, I always imagined like there would be some weird wedding ring put back, like a little like cup. A wedding ring cup in Amy's ship.
Could have like one of those ring holder hands or
yeah. Oh yeah.
Back of the finger.
Oh god, those are so creepy.
Not all of the AR fragments have voice clips associated with them, and not all of them are like primarily concerned with music, but this is the AR fragments are our space to put diegetic music into the game to basically hear the music that characters were listening to when these moments happened. The music element of AR fragments was a cool place to be able to involve different musicians in Tacoma. The band that Nat is listening to here and that's in Sarah's bunk is a band called Floating Room that are a Portland band that we discovered during the development of the game, and they had like a feel to their music that we thought really fit. They also play the end credits music
and our launch
in
party.
the game, and they played at our launch party, which was really sweet of them.
Yes.
And our friend Matt Burns, who is a musician and also works in the games industry as a writer and a producer, provided us the music for Nat's Office. Patrick did at least one of the tracks.
Did the one in Bert and Nat's bunk.
Yeah. And some of it, was like public domain stuff like the old-timey jazz music. But yeah, it was just another way to get a cool variety of contributions from different artists and performers into the game.
One of the things that happens when you're working with a smaller team is that you can have interactions with everyone on the team, and that is something that I dearly miss. That was certainly almost true, I would say, of my earliest games, the Starfighter games at LucasArts. I had connection with a large amount of the team because our engineering group was pretty small in that, and so we all wore multiple hats. So I worked with all of the designers and many of specific types of artists. So we had environment artists that I often worked a lot with, but maybe not the artists who made the ships. Here, literally every person on the team I can have spent some time with and talked about some particular aspect that I need to know about, or to help them do their job better if possible. So that's a thing that's greatly changed moving to this. When I worked on larger teams with big teams of engineers, I spent almost all of my time with engineers, and it was only when specific designers or artists had specific needs of our group that they would come to me. I didn't really have the chance to just kind of walk around and spend time with individual artists or designers, which is something I dearly missed, and actually is a big part of why I've become an independent again and doing consulting, is to have the opportunity to work directly with people and see myself more on the screen as a result as well.
There's a Christmas duck in Nat's bunk, which is very jolly and lights up and sings a song. And Patrick composed the lovely song, and I kind of set it up to be interactive so you can click it to turn it on and off and stuff. Where did the song come from for you?
Yeah, the main thing was just to kind of get that classic kind of MIDI piano sound, almost like the sound like when you open greeting cards and they play those obnoxious tones at you. So it's just it's just a piano sound that I really bit reduced and simulated sending it through a really small speaker to kind of sell the idea that it was maybe cheaply.
I did most of the product.
There's a Christmas duck in Nat's bunk, which is very jolly and lights up and sings a song. And Patrick composed the lovely song, and I kind of set it up to be interactive so you can click it to turn it on and off and stuff. Where did the song come from for you?
Yeah, the main thing was just to kind of get that classic kind of MIDI piano sound, almost like the sound like when you open greeting cards and they play those obnoxious tones at you. So it's just it's just a piano sound that I really bit reduced and simulated sending it through a really small speaker to kind of sell the idea that it was maybe cheaply manufactured.
Oh my god, that's so cool. Wait, so did you were playing it through a real physical tiny speaker?
Yeah, a tiny speaker. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
Yeah, super analog. Yeah, but I love the Christmas duck just because, I don't know, it's one of those moments that feel really personal when the player kind of stumbles across it. At least it did for me when I was playing through and found it. So
I did most of the product labels in Tacoma. I had some help from some of our contract artists, but I feel like I spent most of my time on this game just making up boxes for things. And honestly, I'm a stickler for detail, but my only real secret is just research the hell out of it. Just look up everything you can find that is in that space as a product and try to distill the main concepts into something that you can make happen.
I come from this background, art-wise, of illustration. When I first went to school, it wasn't for games. It was for book illustration. And, you know, it's a very traditional... A lot of the tools that you work with, if you're not working with Photoshop, are literally things like paint and scratchboard and very physical media. And eventually, in my career, I decided I really wanted to work in games. So, you know, I moved to digital and 3D tools like Maya and ZBrush, and in this case, more recently, the Substance programs. There's this evolutionary biology idea of the Red Queen's race, where the faster you run, the more you stand still, sort of thing. And with game art, because it's constantly evolving, all the technology's changing all the time, everyone's making new tools, always finding new ways of making things look cool. There's this process of always learning that, I mean, you always have to learn in illustration too, yeah, but kind of once you get a handle on painting, you sort of know what you're in for. But with game art tools, the moment you feel like you've mastered a game art tool is the moment a new one comes out that does something even better. So it's a very exciting world to work in, but at the same time, if you don't like learning things, it's, you know, it can be quite difficult, and sometimes it is frustrating. But, you know, the principles of it are more or less, they sort of stay the same. So, you know, if you're struggling with it at all, it's basically the patience that is the main skill you have to learn for game art. It's not necessarily whether you know Maya or not, it's whether or not you stick with it. But yeah, game art, it's a lot.
We're here to talk about working together as programmers. It's interesting because it has been a while since I've worked with someone for whom this was a first game.
Yep.
And that is unusual. So I have a almost 20-year history now in games, and
I have a 3-year history in working in games now.
That's right.
Well, I was kind of thrown into the deep end when I was hired. We didn't have any other programmers, so having others come onto the project was super exciting for me.
Yeah. Yes, it's funny because you think of programmers as working in a vacuum, but the truth is I think we benefit a lot from a meetings of the minds to be able to pass on just whatever bits and bobs I could think of to pass along as I encountered things working with you.
Well, one of the things Brett really helped me with was being more aware of how I was using processing power and memory and all sorts of things, like making the stuff I was writing more efficient. And as that became more and more of a concern later down on the road, I became much more aware of like, oh, I was doing this in a super unsustainable way.
Yeah, a lot of that's just, accruing experience, and the best way to pass that on is to be able to talk over it with someone. I mean, certainly I have been doing throughout my career, but that has changed over time. There's been a lot less direct mentorship later in my career because the teams are large and established, and I'm giving a lot of guidance, but not necessarily. I'm generally working with people who are more experienced, and so I don't have to pass those tidbits along, or they may have tidbits of their own that I'm picking up as well. So anyway, that's all been kind of a terrific part of this project for me in particular.
I will take any tidbits you have to share.
So the concept behind One Vein is that they are an augmented reality boy band, which is to say one of them is a physical person, i.e. Marcus, and the other two are
projections.
Like alternate personalities,
entities,
kind of.
Like Hatsune Miku.
Much like.
But they do look like real people as opposed to...
It's true. It's
And importantly, the song that Nat is listening to in the shower was written by our one intern, Dylan, who's amazing.
Yes.
And he just wrote the One Vein song, the official One Vein song, and you can get it on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
And so he brought life to the One Vein band and wrote the lyrics.
And sang each part.
Yeah.
In character.
Which is exactly like what the fiction is, 'cause
Right.
it's the one guy.
Exactly.
So it's basically perfect. Like, I remember there was one day where we were in the office and we were talking about naming them, and it was somehow like went from Veiny Johnny to Wizard Marcus and Marcus.
Well, I thought I thought that it basically started as us saying that the character's going to have different archetypes, kind
Right.
of. You know, because a lot of boy bands, it's like, he's
Right,
the bad boy with a leather jacket, and he's the sporty guy, and
Right.
he's the nice guy with glasses. And so we were like, well, there's Marcus, who's just the general sexy, stylish
All-purpose.
boy band guy. And then there's Veiny Johnny, who's the sports boy. And then we were like, and then what else? It's like, what if one of them was just a wizard or a magician or some sort of magic user?
Probably
and we're
Tynan came up with that. Let's be honest.
Well, I mean, if it was Tynan, he would have been like, one of them's a skeleton warrior.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But yeah, I think we were like, what are their archetypes? One of them could be a wizard. And then from there, we were just riffing, and we were like, what if his name was just Wizard Marcus? Because he was the wizard version of Marcus.
So good.
And now we live in hell.
By the way, I like that the human boy is just the all-purpose
regular.
boy.
General.
And then like somehow sports is like a fantasy thing
Very
alongside
special.
wizards.
Yeah, it's fine.
That
Sports are
good.
fantasy.
Yeah, I agree.
Odin, is this it?
That is the location I mentioned.
You're there? You're gonna need a crowbar or something.
No, it's open. It's just hanging open.
What?
I must inform you that Ventura's regulations forbid contracting crew members direct access to AI hardware. But I cannot prevent you from proceeding.
Nat, I'm going in.
Okay, just be careful.
Network technology is a funny wing for me because I made the gray block of it at least 3 separate times, like starting from scratch, like literally building the wing from scratch 3 separate times in gray block form, which is more than any other wing. And it was also, I think, one of the earliest wings that I worked on. Because it was one of the earliest gray blocks that I was doing, I was adding all sorts of like different purposed rooms to the wing originally. And in the process of like cutting a lot of those rooms and making the space more focused, it just made the most sense to like scrap the whole level and start from scratch. So the core of it would be designed to support a more focused space.
Right. Cutting off a bunch of rooms and just being left with a weird squirrely hallway or core that is no longer necessary can just be kind of like you're left with a strange shape.
Yeah. And also, like, even though I was remaking it, like, the core concept was still there. Like, I kept that circular staircase kind of thing in it from the beginning and never fully trashed that idea. So it was more like iteration to preserve and refine the good elements that I really enjoyed making. And then, yeah, being able to, like, reshape that to fit the more concise idea of the space was good.
Is this... What is all this? Communication records?
I cannot prevent you from accessing exposed data in this restricted area.
Yes. Yeah, he's recording. It is with great sadness that I address you today, February 29th, 2088. Mere hours ago, 6 loyal men and women, the crew of Lunar Transfer Station Tacoma, lost their lives serving Venturis, and all of us who rely on the orbital economy. Tragically, due to human error on the part of the crew, Venturis rescue technicians were not made aware of the catastrophic oxygen loss until it was too late. Our heartfelt thoughts and prayers are with their families. If only tragedies like this were avoidable. But in truth, they are. As we know, each minute that human workers spend stationed isolated in orbit is another opportunity for heroes like the crew of Tacoma to lose their lives. We at Venturis say no more. The partisan obstructionism that led to the failure of the Orbital Workers' Safety Bill has claimed its last victim. Today, we hereby renew our solemn pledge to fight for the legalization of fully automated orbital facilities. We encourage, we humbly beg everyone listening to this message to contact their OSEP representative and voice their support in honor of the crew of Tacoma. There never need be another tragedy like this one. And now, a moment of silence in their memory. Okay, and then we just cut it there, silent for a minute, and then what, Amazing Grace? No, I don't need another take. That was fine.
Пипец дичь. Консультировался с искусственным интеллектом Джуна, чтобы убить тут всех. Поднять акции, вывести то, что хочет. Свои новые технологии. Пипец, чуваки. Как говорится, корпорация превыше всего, а жизни людей не важны. Пипец.
When Steve asked me to voice Sergio, he didn't exactly say that Sergio was the villain of the story. But I could tell by the way he described Sergio, sort of smooth, confident, the public face of a big corporation, that he probably wasn't going to be the hero. So when I got the script, I learned that Sergio speaks in monologues rather than dialogue with other characters. That got me thinking about how video games present characters through PA systems or audio logs. So I was thinking about games like System Shock 2 and of course BioShock and Andrew Ryan. So I began to think about how to convey Sergio's villainy in a sort of video gamey way, which is to say, not how I normally teach actors to work, which means the kind of acting you typically find in video games. It sort of insists that the actor wear that one defining thing about a character on his sleeve. So villains sound properly villainous. So when it came time to record, I asked Steve and Carla what they were looking for, and Steve just said, "Be yourself." And I was like, And Steve said, "No, we really want you to just be your kind of genial, soothing self. Don't play the villainy, just play it straight," which I translated to mean find the truth, which is what actors do. There are a lot of things to admire about Tacoma, but for me, it's the naturalness of the performances that really delivers the characters and roots them in a believable reality. It's the way that we don't tell you what you're supposed to think or feel about these characters, and the way we don't distill our roles into easily recognizable types. As actors, we make choices that trust the player to construct meaning on her own rather than pulling from a bag of tricks that every actor owns. I think when you trust your actors like that, you're really communicating a sense of trust in your players as well.
Odin's wetware is this little drawer that, with the gold handle that Amy pulls out of this pillar and takes back to her ship. And the player doesn't really get a long look at Odin during the little animation that plays. So I am including a little snapshot render of the model itself. When we first started talking about Odin's design, like not Odin the room, but Odin the actual, this little individual piece of wetware, Carla had mentioned the shapes and forms of a Romanesco cauliflower. And in my first version of the model, I'd actually taken up an alpha or black and white height map, essentially, of a Romanesco cauliflower and sort of pressed it into the actual model to get the shapes. But it was a bit noisy and it didn't really read as intended. It made some cool patterns, but it was also a little cluttered visually. So we did a second pass on the model, and we made him look more brain-like, more wetware-like, more organic. And in Odin 2.2, you know, it felt more like a living piece of technology than the previous rendition had. And I remember spending a lot of time painting out the little veins and things in there. And I really like how gross it looks. This is another part of it. I tried to make it as glossy and weird as I could. So that's Odin. He's actually, you know, he's a handsome voice in a gross little box.
If someone were to override that protocol, external communications channels would be restored.
Odin, thank you. Hailing any ship within radio range of Lunar Transfer Station Tacoma. This is an SOS. Is anybody out there?
Немного похоже на System Shock. Там же тоже искусственный интеллект типа взбесился, корабля убил. А тут не взбесился, тут приказ убить экипаж. Жесть. А так-то все с искусственным интеллектом очень много. Просто выполнен приказ. Катился.
He's still waking up. Just keep him talking.
So the drone...
still waking up. Just keep him talking.
So the drone worked?
No, the drone didn't work.
Oh, so VT is picking us up.
No, VT is definitely not picking us up.
What's going on then?
We're going to Jupiter, Andrew. Isn't that exciting?
I've never been.
Nat, give him a break.
We're not going to be home for a while. Right, you're not going to miss your kid's graduation or anything, are you?
Oh, Nicholas, no. Yeah, you know Nicholas, why he would never do something like that.
She said they'd be kind of out of it for a while.
Andrew, what's important is we're getting out of this alive. We're going to be somewhere where VT can't touch us for a good, long while. We're going to be safe.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. It's good. Hi, Evie, Clive. You feeling okay?
I'm feeling okay.
We're feeling okay?
Yeah. Okay, everybody. Our ride is here. This is it. Take one last look and say goodbye. All right. Let's go. He's still waking up. Just keep him talking.
So the drone worked?
No, the drone didn't work.
So, the cryopods here in Hub are meant to freeze the crew in case of emergency. And these pods can be seen through the cryo room window in Hub from the very beginning of the game. To not ruin the story or the mystery of whether the crew are in the pods or not, I tried to make a script that would effectively make it so the glass on the cryopods is opaque and then slowly becomes transparent as you move in. However, when I was making this script, there was a fun event. The test color I used, it was a blood red. It did look like the cryopods were all filled with blood, which then kind of dissipated into a mist as you approached. This is the kind of thing you want to show your fellow teammates. And before I did that, I decided to get the skeleton model that is in medical and put one in every one of the cryopods, and then call people over and have them give it a shot. It's the kind of thing you really want to do when you're showing off a new feature.
Okay, lovebirds. Your vitals look good. Let's get you moving. Resplendence dinghy is just about docked.
Oh, we have to.
Oh, we have to. Believe me. So what's going to happen with Odin?
You said there was some sort of malfunction?
No, not exactly.
Excuse me.
somebody up here? Some sort of malfunction? No, not exactly. My guess? They'll have somebody up here and haul him back to headquarters. Wipe him back to baseline. Probably have to replace the station AI entirely while he regrows.
Odin, I'm not gonna let that happen. Okay? Don't worry.
Excuse me. We are feeling okay?
Yeah. Okay, everybody. Our ride is here. This is it. Take one last look and say goodbye. All right. Let's go.
Excuse me.
The cleaner bot was originally made when the game was a lot more zero-G, and it was meant to fly everywhere, kind of add a, I don't know, personality and also life to a place that would otherwise be empty.
Well, one of the things I like about the bot, Tynan, it's one of the few characters in the game that you feel like you can really dynamically play around with. Like, you can actually touch that character and like throw it around. And the fact that it doesn't have a ton of animation, as a sound designer, I really love characters like that because it means that I can express pretty much anything I want. It's almost like a blank canvas. So randomly, like the cleaner bot will kind of talk to you, but it only says like 3 or 4 things. It was just an opportunity to have it sort of respond to you and the world.
So was it you? Were you the bot? Who was the voice actor?
Oh, like of the actual voice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's my husband, Mark, actually. Yeah, like I grabbed him when he got home, and it was really funny because, you know, whatever, like we all make games, you know, and Mark does not, and he like kept on. It's like the longest recording session I've ever been in, dude. It was like 3 files, and he literally wanted to just read it over and over and over, and I was trying to explain to him that it didn't really matter because I was going to manipulate it so much. And I just sat there patiently recording for like 30 minutes, these like 3 wave files. He is super proud of the cleaner bot though.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Пока что не очень понял, экипаж все-таки спасся или не спасся. Пришло он их спастись или нет. Это в начале, когда я приходил. Так, что он пишет?
Minnie, I'm back.
Okay. Ship is ready to depart. Please strap into the pilot seat.
The fun thing for us about where Tacoma ends up is that the whole game has been about Amy, who's voiced by Sarah Grayson, who did the voice of Sam in Gone Home, coming into contact finally with Odin, who's voiced by Carl Lumbly, who played Porter in Minerva's Den, and them kind of getting to be cool friends and ride off into the sunset together.
And fighting crime.
Yeah, maybe. We don't know.
They're totally fighting crime.
That's
They're fighting
true.
AI crime.
Corporate crime.
Hell yes.
Fair point. And also, you know, I really wanted to have kind of a, like, you know, hell yeah kind of moment at the end and be like, oh, you were there to save him and now you get to escape.
Even if what's going to go on past that point might be a little more difficult.
Right. Like, it's once, you know, it's sort of what Odin implies in the first conversation he has with Sarah, where it's like, once the AILF actually has their hands on an AI, it's not clear if they really know what they're going to do with it. Right. But, you know, getting him out of the hands of Venturis is step one.
Yeah.
And then relying on their sovereignty as a like free orbital platform is step two, I guess, maybe, or them having to go into hiding. I don't even know.
Even though Juno is on the track of Amy in some way, and even if Amy's harder to track down than it looks, it still might be a problem.
Yeah, and
probably.
And so, you know, I think that we don't know where the stories in our games go after the end of the credits. And so I think we're really focused on, you know, what happens within the text and the possibilities of where that could go next, and hopefully those seeming interesting. So, thank you so much for playing through Tacoma with commentary mode enabled.
Played it.
Yeah. We hope that you learned some things about how the game was made and how different people on the team thought about their work than you would have otherwise. And just thank you in general for taking time to play the game.
Nina and Tynan did a shit ton of work cutting up all of these VO files.
Yeah, thank
and we
you.
should thank them as well.
Thank you, Nina and Tynan, for editing these hundreds of minutes of commentary into the thing that people just played through.
Into concise, beautiful nuggets of information.
Oh, we'll see about that.
They're concise and beautiful.
A lot of them were us talking, so I don't know about beautiful
Okay,
necessarily.
bye.
Thank you, everybody. See you
Thank
next
you.
time.
Okay, Minnie. Initiate the launch sequence.
Okay. Getting ready. Hosted AI online.
Odin, can you hear me?
I can.
Odin, you are now aboard an AI Liberation Front vessel. The AILF recognizes you as a sentient consciousness worthy of protection and respect. We believe that your safety and autonomy are in grave danger if you remain in the possession of the Venturis Corporation. I have been sent to offer you political asylum aboard the Tangier Sovereign Orbital Platform. Do you accept?
Considering the alternative, I would say that I do.
Okay, buddy. Here we go.
Все, прошел Такому с комментариями разработчиков. Спасибо, что смотрели. Всем пока.